I wanted to be a film composer since I was 5. In fact, I appeared on the Michael Aspel radio show on Capital Radio when I was about 7 and said that, so it's on the record. But I went to a crappy school and kind of flunked out and basically put those ambitions behind me. Went and became a baker. Technology, though, always fascinated me. And as I was drawn to that, it was only natural that I would draw my interest in technology and apply it to that of music at a point in time where music technology was exploding. And what I didn't realise at the time was that the technology of music to picture was also advancing at a rapid rate, as was the porn industry in the UK at the time, which showed a great interest in young whippersnappers like me who were able to provide quite sophisticated sounding scores without having to go to the expense and hassle of hiring a band with the bongos and the wah-wah guitar and the guy on the Wurlitzer vamping away. But there was one person who reignited my dream of becoming a film composer, and that was Maggie Rodford. She became my agent. She's still my agent today. And she basically said, Christian, you're really strong at some things, so play to that strength. And where you have weaknesses, you simply get help. And thus, I was launched into this very scary void. This place where I didn't know what I was doing, except that I wanted to do it. But there was no one to talk to. There was no social media in those days. In fact, the internet was still dial-up. All you did was emails, a bit of dating, and the other thing. A lot of which contained my music, to be fair. And so I followed her advice, and the help that I got was in the shape of James Bellamy, Benjamin Valfish, my brother Joe. We kind of worked together as a team on my first couple of films, all 4 of us flailing around, not really knowing what we were doing, moaning about how difficult it was, learning from how difficult it was. But because we were together as a team, it was just a less scary place to be. Joe, James and Ben, in their own individual ways, went on to bigger and better things. But as I stumbled along in those kind of first few years of my career as a professional composer, it was the other composers that I was meeting that fascinated me, because whilst I hold someone like Patrick Doyle in the highest possible regard, I found it fascinating that he knew as little about computers and programming as I did about orchestration. So these encounters with other music makers, whether they be brief or extended, seem to be long conversations of how do you do that? And do you bust the delay before it hits the reverb? All of these technical conversations, because I realised we were all, to a certain degree, busking it. It was as if this technology had arrogantly presented us with a whole new set of expectations which we weren't quite living up to, weren't quite up to speed on. It was around this point, maybe 13 years ago, that I met another composer called Paul Thompson, who suggested that maybe the technology wasn't the issue per se, but the content therein, because the content wasn't being built by people who were anywhere near the coalface of Delane Lee in Soho. It was instead being made by people in distant lands who were technologists. Maybe that in order for something to be commercial, it has to be generic for all tastes, and therefore with no taste. So we decided to take what other people were doing and do the opposite. So we would be at the coalface in Soho. We would be a bunch of composers making stuff for composers, understanding the workflow, understanding the time constraints, and at all costs we would make something that would never ever be commercial. And we stuck to those pledges, pretty much, certainly for the first 2 years anyway. But what was extraordinary, other than the library that we created out of that, was this small kind of node of composers. Didn't really know each other, but we had this common thing that we were working around, a set of samples and 2 blokes who were totally busking it, but learning by applying what we were doing to our craft and listening to what other people were doing with our samples. Then, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, because of the walkthroughs and the size of the now commercial form of Spitfire had grown to such a point Paul was getting quite famous. I got jealous. So I started playing with YouTube as well, but because I don't come from a learned background like Paul does, I was very nervous that I was going to basically be teaching or trying to teach composers how to suck eggs. It turns out there are quite a lot of people who find themselves in a similar position to me, not just because they didn't go to music college, quite the contrary, because they did go to music college but never learned how to use tech in the way that I understood it. So these videos too proved to be quite popular. We decided to change our website design, so we copied another company's website design, and they had this thing called a journal, and I said, well, we might as well. And how did we curate it? Well, the age-old method of that, well, kind of working out what as composers we would like to watch, and it was by doing the journal that we learned a very important lesson, and that is not to be arrogant to think what's going to be successful, one film over and above another. A great example of that is our most successful film to date, which doesn't feature a star, is the Harpeth video one, basically me pretending to be ignorant about loudspeakers in a loudspeaker factory, whereas this film, linked below, brilliant, about a bassoon, taught me so much I didn't know, not at all popular. So it's a very important lesson there. An extraordinary thing happened. We went to NAMM, I guess about 4 months after launching the journal, and our previous NAMMs had been incredible in the sense that people had been very kind of congratulatory about what we'd done with the samples and said how much they enjoyed them, and there was naturally a lot of feedback about things that we could improve. But this year was incredible because a lot of people came up to us and said this one word, and that was thanks. And it was thanks for the journal. And what we thought had been a kind of whimsical venture was actually being appreciated by people. So it made us double down on our efforts. So we built this to put all the people we needed to make all this fantastic content. Homai and Lauren and all of the amazing talent that's in here. The videos we made were of a better quality. It wasn't just Paul and I playing with YouTube. That became problematic for me because it meant that I didn't really have anything to do. At first with Spitfire I kind of did the branding and then the packaging, and then I used to do the pros and the user manuals and used to help James design the website. But now we had a whole entire team of people doing this, so I wasn't doing any doing, and in fact I used to say my job seemed to be about criticising other people's work or approving it or congratulating it. So it was Will's suggestion that I set up my own channel, and this is really when the interaction with the community for me came to life, how kind of special and unique it was. And I am going to get to a point in a minute. And so I built this channel, which has been, I'm really not exaggerating when I say it has changed my life. I've become a little bit of a kind of YouTube fanboy because I think the opportunity is so incredible, particularly where, you know, seeing it as sets of communities, not broadcast channels. It's a two-way conversation. And obviously what sprung out of this channel has been this amazing piano book thing. If you haven't seen this film linked above, it's the year anniversary. When the BBC came knocking about 3 years ago, I thought, well, is it going to be just another orchestral library? You know, what makes Spitfire unique from other excellent, like Orchestral Tools does great stuff, and 8DO does great stuff. There's you know, Native Instruments and alike. There's fantastic sample libraries out there. And I would say, other than, you know, us having our particular approach to sampling, which has its unique nuances, I think something that's very special about Spitfire is the investment that we've made in the community, because we're always part of it, because we're composers. How do we make a sample library with a difference? Well, instead of having a sample library and building a community of users around that, why don't we build a sample library for a community of users? And therein lies the kind of initial kernel idea for the BBC SO. So by taking lessons learned from this amazing journey of first Spitfire Audio and that small core group of people, all the way onto Piano Book's first anniversary and that amazing walk I took up at Griffith Park at the observatory, again linked above. The lessons we have learned there, we thought we'd apply it to this concept of a universal starting point by also having a universal starting place. And this is where I want this film to come to rest, because we've created a space but we have learnt over the years not to prescribe what its contents should be. We want that to be defined by the community, to build content, to build a sample library, and even if you're not in a position to have the BBC SO, a central resource for this amazing community. So we've made a thing. We don't know what it actually is yet, but we know what it's called. The Page! Now when I say we don't know what it is going to be, we know what we'd want it to be, but we've learned over the years not to be presumptuous. So we would really like your input here. We don't even have a forum on this page yet. It is literally a blank page. So I'd love to use this channel and the experience that I've gained from it, both with this community, with the Piano Book community, and with the Spitfire channel, to discuss it further. And I will be keeping an eagle eye on your comments down below. I imagine some form of aggregation of all of the amazing material that will be springing up from a library that is designed to fit around a community, a single universal starting point and opportunity. And it's not just about this library, it's just this library forms a focus for us to develop this idea of a collaboration to utilize the amazing opportunity that I think YouTube presents. A node, a hub that brings all of those communities and conversations together. Whatever you do to contribute to the page, whether that be set up your own YouTube channel and become a YouTube star, we will promote it. You will have the infrastructure that I showed you earlier. All of those genius people will help and aid and assist you as much as we can. Music is about bringing people together, and this is a unique opportunity that we have. As I said before, it is just the beginning, and you have the opportunity of being an OG, an original gangster in this infrastructure that I hope we can build, even if it is us just pointing simply to another part of the internet where there's something brilliant going on. This is where my heart lies with Spitfire in the forthcoming years, and why I'm a Spitfire lifer. But it's not about Spitfire, it's about this community, and this has been the most extraordinary part of this entire journey. I'm not going to ask you to subscribe, I'm not going to ask you to ding that bell or even like this video. I'm going to ask you, if you can, to use that energy to put a comment down below about what you think the page should be. Thanks for watching till the end. It's been quite a waffly one, this one. I really look forward to reading your comments, and see you next time. A few weeks ago, we announced our most ambitious project to date. One orchestra, one plugin, a universal starting point, a means in which we can truly collaborate and learn from one another. Music has always been about coming together and sharing, and we want to take that into the modern age. But we can't do that alone. This is where we need your help. We've built a thing, but we don't know what it's going to become, because we want you to define that. Linked below is a place called The Page, and it's literally a blank page at the moment. But we hope and dream that it'll be a place for people to congregate, collaborate, share and learn, whether it be from content we make or indeed us just aggregating content from elsewhere. We want to make new YouTube stars. Whatever you contribute, you will have the full power of the machinery of Spitfire Audio and this incredible community of hundreds of thousands of composers globally. So the first step is for you to comment down below in what you want this to be, the kind of content you want to see, long, short, detailed, theoretical, the kind of content you would like to share, and how you think we should go about that, the discussions you want to have and how you want to have those discussions. The whole of the Spitfire team thanks you in advance for stepping up to comment, and we hope becoming one of the founding mothers or fathers or indeed OGs of this new way of collaborating, of sharing, of learning. Oh, and one more thing. In order for us to consider your contributions, we're going to use the handle #OneOrchestra. Put that in the title of whatever you make and we'll make sure we find it. But it was a bit weird for me because I used to do the packaging and I used to do the